Hello and welcome to Breakthroughs with Bree, where we are discussing all the topics that create extraordinary breakthroughs in our personal and spiritual development journeys. I'm Bree, otherwise known as Healing with Bree, and I'm a spiritual coach and Akashic Records channelers who helps sensitives and intuitives connect more deeply with their hearts, intuition, and souls, and teaches people how to process and alchemize the fears and beliefs that hold them back from living in their authenticity and purpose. You're in the right place if you like to hear about spirituality, psychology, healing, consciousness, manifestation, developing your spiritual and intuitive gifts, and living from your heart and soul instead of from your fears and ego. I hope you enjoy this episode. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Breakthroughs with Bree. I got some inspiration for this episode today about trusting your yes, your no's, and your boundaried yeses. This is inspiration from one of my dear friends, Tina. She runs something called the Wisdom Exchange Community, which is a weekly call for women to come together and just discuss things going on in their life, the wisdom of it all. And one of the questions that had come up, or topics I guess we were discussing, was initially how hard it felt to say no to things. Like whether it's that you're flooded with guilt or anxiety, like how hard that feeling can be to when you want to say no, stick to it or to speak it out loud. And Tina had asked me Bree, do you feel guilty saying no? And I thought about it and I was like, you know what? I don't feel guilty saying no anymore, but that was not always true for me. There was a time where I thought that it was selfish to say no, where I felt really guilty if what I wanted to say was no, or I would get a lot of anxiety if I wasn't saying yes to people. And I've done a lot of healing work to sort of detox some of those beliefs and close some of those emotional trauma loops that were open and kind of driving me into that pattern or fueling that underlying anxiety or sort of fear about it all. And I wanted to share that journey with you guys today and about what it can look like, and now what I tell myself, what I sort of self-soothe with, to be able to trust and feel safe enough to say yes when I mean yes, to say no when I mean no, and how to say yes with a boundary, or AKA have a boundaried yes. Guides, where do you want to start with this? Okay, this is what the guides are saying. They're saying just because somebody is saying they need something does not mean that they need it from you. They feel a little cheeky when they're saying that. I'm imagining a person who maybe has a little bit of a victim energy too, or a very sad, oh no, I don't know what I'm gonna do, because those people be really hard to say no to, where they have that oh, I just can't figure this out, or oh, I just need help, or oh, can you just do it for me? There's that underlying energy underneath it all. And what the guides are saying is actually what supports their highest plan, their highest purpose, their highest growth is for people around them to honor their own gut feeling about if they, the other person, or let's just call this ourselves, if we should really be participating in that person's journey, right? Because sometimes us acknowledging that we need a little help or we're struggling with something is the first step, and we're not meant to immediately go out to somebody else to get that need met. In fact, what we're supposed to be doing is taking that ball down the field a little further, right? A lot of times what we're meant to do is to acknowledge, oh wait, I need something, and how might I go about meeting this need for myself? For a lot of people, that's the path. Now, I will say there's two ends of the spectrum. There's some people who had to develop reliance on themselves and they don't incorporate the role that emotional support plays in the process of managing stress and moving through life. And I've done a whole episode about that before. But then there's people on the other end of the spectrum who are kind of the ones that are a little bit more needy or quick to ask and take help from other people. And usually these two people on the opposite ends of the spectrum find each other because the people who aren't doing it themselves, they need other people who ignore their own feelings and do it for them. They need those people. Because if they were in relationship with people that honored their own instincts about whether to step in and do it for them or whether not to, then they would probably be put in a position where they've had to look in the mirror and they had to be okay, what do I got to do here? I got to roll up my sleeves a little bit and learn how to do this myself. I got to ask myself some tough questions. I got to sit with some tough feelings. I got to try something new and vulnerable, right? And really that's what they're avoiding when they're asking you to do it for them. The emotional labor, maybe it's the physical thing, maybe it's the money, maybe it's whatever thing that people are asking you for, right? And so the first thing the guides want you to know about this, if you're somebody that struggles saying no and you find yourself in the role of somebody who's always saying yes to other people, right? Is that just because they're recognizing recognizing they need it. And if you're really sensitive, you might feel that they are feeling like they need it. Does not mean that it should come from you. The second part of that, which I already kind of alluded to, is that it really feels like to me there's like this bigger divine plan that Spirit is always trying to orchestrate to support all of our highest and best good of the collective and of us individually, right? And this includes us getting to a place where we feel the most amount of peace and empowerment and safety and abundance and all that kind of stuff. But oftentimes for us to get there, like we got to learn some lessons. We got to drop some old beliefs that aren't true. We got to let go of some patterns. We got to learn new skills. We got to like take steps into new places in order to get that. And that's where we have the most like reliable and deep rooted sense of those things that we want. That's where we have the most reliable and deep rooted love. And again, safety and prosperity and like all these things that we want. The version of it that is going to be most satisfying to us is often when we go on that inner journey to get it. And the divine plan, the divine orchestration of it all is the way in which we learn that the quickest, the easiest, the most powerfully. Right? Now we still get support and help and assistance whenever we need it, right? But sometimes the plan includes an absence of the crutch that we usually go to so that we finally learn how to build that muscle. Okay? And we have to be able to tolerate not only our own discomfort, but the fact that other people are in discomfort too, because that is the path to the growth. That is the path to the healing. That is the path to their peace, is facing the discomfort that they or we are running from. And sometimes it feels like what's driving us to say yes when we don't mean yes, or we don't really want to, or we feel guilty, is because we think, one, their discomfort is our fault, and it's not. Or two, we don't know how to tolerate our own discomfort, especially as sensitives, because we can feel it in our bodies when they're moving through discomfort, right? Or even like our own guilt. Our guilt is a form of our discomfort. We don't know how to move through our own guilt. And being able to do that is leading us to our highest good. It's leading us to our highest healing. It's leading us to our highest potential. Okay, so our discomfort is not a bad thing, and it's often tied to what's most supportive to us. Now, the last thing I'll say about this kind of divine plan is that the way that it feels like we move through our part in this plan, right? If there's all these people and all these different puppet strings and all these different like overlapping paths and things that people are doing, the way that we find our role in it all is by trusting our intuition and our heart-led desires. When we have a feeling to go do something or be somewhere or say yes to something, there's probably purpose in it, and we are a player in the divine plan. For the positive, right? If we have the desire to say no about something, then that means we were not meant to be interacting with those people, places, or things according to the divine plan. Maybe if it's somebody coming and asking you for something and you say no, they're meant to go to the next person on their list that they were going to ask, or they're meant to look at an option that they wouldn't have considered if you had said yes, and that is where their greatest purpose is, right? Like, so us having our ability to tune into that inner compass, like I always say, about where we should be moving and how we can contribute to this bigger plan, I firmly believe is according to our intuition and our heart-led desires. Now, this is one of the biggest things that comforts me, that like soothes any kind of anxiety I might have when I have the feeling to say yes or no to something, and there's not another reason that like soothes me, right? Like if I don't really have a reason for why I'm saying no to somebody, like it's not that I don't have the time, it's not that I don't have the energy, it's not that I don't have the resources, it's just I'm just feeling a no, which is basically the absence of feeling a yes. If it's not a full yes, then it's usually a no. But sometimes it's even a visceral like leaning away from it kind of energy. If I don't have another explanation for it, it is incredibly soothing to me to remember that the no's are just as important as the yeses in terms of me finding my own path in this divine plan, as well as me being a servant to the greater plan of it all. Do you know what I'm saying? So I guess we're starting with the no's in terms of like, how do we trust our yes no's and boundaried yeses? Our no's are so sacred. They're so sacred. Now, some of those beliefs that we have to unlearn is that our worth is tied to what we do for other people, right? Or that we and our actions are responsible for other people's feelings. Or that our quality as a person, like if we're a good person or a bad person, is dependent on what we do for other people. Those are all really tricky beliefs that we're conditioned to take on, kind of brainwashed to believe, that can bring up a sense of anxiety or guilt about saying no. It is 100% possible to rewrite those in our subconscious. 100%. Okay? Because now here's how I think about all of these things as somebody that does not really feel guilty saying no. The first one is about worth. The worth thing is big. Like rewriting our sense of worth feels like such a big healing concept. Okay. Very long story short is that I've learned that my worth is in my presence and is in my energy. It's not in any action that I take. Like we are all inherently worthy, like literally just for like existing. And I am inherently worthy for existing. So there's nothing that I can or can't do or that I do or don't do that detracts or adds to my worth. And something that's helped me with that is, you've heard me talk about this in some other episodes, but like, I think about how loyal I am to my friends, like how much I back my friends, like being like a ride or die bestie, right? Like when you have that energy of like, there's nothing that you could tell me that could make me love my friend any less or back them any less or like root them on any less. You know, that kind of like that like supportive behavior is like, you couldn't tell me anything. Like, yeah, they could make mistakes. Yeah, they could not be perfect, but like, I don't give a shit because I know they have a heart of gold. I know they are wonderful. I believe in them. I know they're a good person. Even if they have a moment where they're struggling, like they are good and there's nothing you could tell me otherwise, right? That kind of energy, but having it for myself. Do I believe that my worth is inherent and am I going to back myself, right? Regardless of what I am or am not doing for other people. That goes also into this idea of am I good or not? This was also some shadow work, all of this healing work that I teach people how to do when I do my spiritual healing, like sort of coaching. I 100% had to be in the weeds with myself. I feel like a lot of times we have this like underlying question of like, am I a bad person? Does this make me bad? Like, am I mean? Am I selfish? Like we question if we are those things. And when we're afraid that we might be those things, then all of these trigger points we interpret through the lens of like, oh no, is this confirming that thing that I am afraid of, right? So if we're afraid that we're selfish, then, and we're insecure about if we're selfish, we are interpreting all of these trigger points as like, oh no, is this the thing that proves that I'm selfish, right? Am I going to believe myself that I am not a selfish person? Am I going to believe that? Am I going to believe that I'm inherently loving? Am I going to believe that I'm inherently kind? Like, do I trust that I am those things? Yes. And the way that I've been able to trust that is by confronting the times when I wasn't acting kind, or maybe when I was acting kind of selfishly. Like I had to do that shadow work and see what was really going on. And what I've learned in all of those situations with myself and with other people is that when some of those, I don't know, you could call them like toxic or like negative behaviors or coping mechanisms come out, they are never because I'm inherently bad. They're because there's a part of me that is afraid or in pain that's learned that's the best way to either get safe again or to alleviate the pain. That's it. It's not because they're inherently bad. It's not because they're inherently selfish. None of that. They are pure-hearted little parts of myself that are trying their best to become safe and to get critical needs met the way that they learned how. They didn't even come up with this themselves. They learned it from other people. And when I look at myself like that, I know that the core of myself is good. And again, I'm going to have that loyal friend energy of like, you cannot tell me that any part of myself is bad because I have learned from doing the shadow work over and over and over again, none of these parts are bad. Even if they have a behavior or a coping mechanism that's not great, we can work it out. Like we can get to the place of what is this about? Let's switch out this coping strategy for something more healthy. And we can get to a place where we're acting more heart-centered, but that does not make me bad. It does not make me selfish, right? So anyway, getting to the point where I believe that I'm not bad, you know, like there's no part of me that's inherently bad, and putting that fear, that insecurity, that, oh my gosh, is this the thing that proves I'm selfish? Putting that to rest helped alleviate a lot of this guilt and anxiety about saying no and trusting my no's. Oh, and the last thing about feeling responsible for other people's stuff. Again, I think about kind of what I said at the beginning in that greater purpose for people. And sometimes people's greatest purpose is walking straight into their pain. And it's not my job to save them from their pain. I was doing that for a long time. I still have the impulse to do that sometimes. I gotta watch out for that, you know? It's not my job to save people from their pain. Our pain is actually one of our greatest teachers. It's like one of our greatest helpers. Now, I, of course, feel a lot of empathy for people who are truly suffering. And even when I say no, it's not like a calloused way. Like I still am empathetic. It's like, oh, I know you're really struggling. I know this is something you really need help with. I know this is difficult for you. And I'm really feeling for you for that. And I mean it, but that does not mean that that's more important than my no. You know what I'm saying? Like I can still be empathetic to that you're struggling, that you have pain, or that you're in some sort of discomfort, but I trust my no's implicitly. because that is like a directive from God. That's a directive from spirit, from my higher self. That's how I look at my no's and my yeses, right? And I trust my higher self so much. And the fact that its choices are not just about me, they are about this greater plan and orchestration. They are ultimately for the highest and best good of this person too, in some way. I believe that deep in my bones. That like I always listen to that directive. Well, I won't say always, because I'm sure there's times I don't, but like I feel so much more confident about listening to that sort of directive from my higher self, from God, from spirit, from my intuition, however you want to say, that the fact that other people might have to experience discomfort in some form when the circumstance plays out where I say no, that's okay. Again, I don't view pain as a bad thing. I don't view hard times as altogether and only like bad thing. I don't. So that doesn't really have as much of a hold on me anymore. Oh, they're giving me a little nuance to this. The other element of when we might have a hard time saying no is in relationships where we feel like if we say no, that's going to be the end of the relationship. And our bodies and brains are hardwired to maintain connection. Connection is one of those baseline human needs that we need to be safe in our life, period. Our subconscious brain, our primal brain is always trying to maintain safety. Relational connection is one of the places we get safety. So if we feel like our relational connection is at risk if we say no, if we believe that, if we've learned that in the relationship, then that's going to bring on like a whole level of dysregulation and like subconscious programming to the front that feels like it's going to take the wheel, and make it feel like to where you can't say no. This is what I've learned about that is I've had to challenge myself about if one, that's even really true. Like, is it really true that if I say no, this person is gonna like blow up at me, or there's gonna be like irreparable damage to the relationship? Is that really true, or is that my own conditioning I'm kind of projecting onto it? And if it is true, why am I in that relationship? I have a commitment to a healthy relationship with myself and a healthy relationship with other people. That's what helps keep my body regulated. That's what creates the most emotional nourishment for myself and for other people. That's what creates the like most equitable energetic exchange, is healthy relationships, especially close relationships in my life. So I had to go through a learning curve of if I really felt like I said no, either a relationship wouldn't continue or they would get angry, then that was a signal to me that that was not a healthy relationship, because relationships should be able to tolerate no's. They should be able to tolerate ruptures, conflicts, and come back to it with repair and be able to repair past that. There should be enough respect for both people that both people can have their preferences, and both people should be able to manage themselves enough to where if somebody isn't there for the kind of support that they want, that they can either go get it from other places or they can manage it themselves. That is required for a healthy relationship. Now, those were not the kinds of relationships I was raised in, so I thought that like that was too much to ask, but it's not. In fact, it's the minimum for like a healthy relationship. So if you find yourself in that category in terms of you're struggling to say no, then again, maybe like one, is it a healthy relationship? Or two, is it an assumption you're making that you've not even given this other person the chance to show you is not how they would react, right? Or maybe like a new element of the relationship to bring to it. Maybe they're used to you always saying yes, and they might be a little surprised when you say no, but when you start advocating for yourself and saying no and, like reasonably kind of adjusting and bringing this into it, they adapt and they're fine with it. You never know until you try. Trusting the directive of your no's. If you are not feeling like you want to contribute to whatever this person is requesting of you, whether it's because you really don't have the resources to give to it, again, if this is time, energy, material resources, emotional resources, like let's just say you're drained in some way, for sure don't say yes. Or even if you have the resources and you are just feeling like you don't want to, you don't have to explain that at all. And you can just say no, and you should. Because again, that's a sign there's a greater plan. And like how this person goes about getting that need met, figuring out that situation is not meant to happen through you. Have peace with that. You can be kind, you can be compassionate, but stay in your energy. No. Cool? Now let's talk about the yeses, trusting your yeses. I really feel like this comes back to what I talk about a lot of, like trusting your joy, trusting your curiosity, trusting your excitement, and trusting your passions. Those are the language that your intuition and your soul speaks to you. It is guiding you of where you should go based on what you are most excited about, what you're most curious about, what you enjoy the most, what you're most passionate about. Those are your signal points. Those are like the signposts. Go this way. So I find a lot of the time my yeses come in those forms, right? Or when somebody brings an idea to me and all of a sudden my full body is excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a yes, we're doing this, right? That is a really powerful sign that there is purpose in that experience for me. Now, one thing I have to watch out for myself is just because I'm saying yes in that moment doesn't mean it's a yes forever. Sometimes there's purpose in it being initiated but not finished, or there's purpose in it lasting a couple seasons but not forever, or you know what I mean? Like, not to get attached just because there is a moment where you feel a yes, but just for that moment, for each step that you take, trust the feeling of that moment and don't make that have to mean something for every single step you take after that, right? What's another thing that might come up for people to trust their yeses? They're saying sometimes you guys are getting yeses about circumstances that you're not sure how are going to work out. And sometimes you got to trust that if we're leading you to something, like the universe is going to help make it work for you. There's a lot underneath that programming and trust in the universe to support you. And it's never leading you someplace where, you know, you're going to be set up to be at a loss and suffering forever, or like whatever, or even really at all. There's some of that beliefs that we got to do behind that. But again, I find it really comforting, really regulating to my body to think one step at a time. If the very next step, I'm consulting my inner compass, my intuition, my heart, my gut, and it's telling me to move forward in this direction, to say yes to this, then this next step must be purpose. So I'm going to be fully present. I'm going to take that next step. I'm going to say yes. And I'm going to see what's waiting for me after I say yes. I'm going to take whatever that just like incremental thing is. And then I'm going to check in after I've taken that step. How am I feeling now? Now that I've experienced new things, now that I've let this settled, now that I have new information, where's my gut telling me now? Is it another yes forward, or is it in a slightly different direction? You know, is there some sort of thing that's come up that I need to problem solve, that I need to look for solutions about? Not future problems, current problems, because current problems are where solutions come up. Solutions don't come for future problems. Solutions only come up at the exact time the quote unquote problem is actually happening. Fun little thing I learned from the abundance book that we did last year in the book club, A Happy Pocket Full of Money. But like, is there a current circumstance that needs problem solving? And if there is, then look for where the solutions are. And maybe you move through that. And maybe that worry that you had about saying yes and how it would work out, like it doesn't get worked out until you're there. And once you're there, you're fully present. You make responsible choices, you make soul aligned choices, and then you figure out the way forward once you're there. You know what I'm saying? One step at a time, for sure, is the motto for all of this. What else do you want people to know about trusting their yeses? Okay, they're saying some of you get really caught up in, is it the right or wrong choice? Like, is this right or wrong? Is my feeling right or wrong? And again, I've talked about this ad nauseum. There is no right or wrong. And if you put that down, what would this look like? How would you feel? What if there's only the best choice that you can? And you make the best of it. Again, you take one step at a time, you adjust if you need to, and you find the purpose in each step. So nothing was a waste. You have nothing to regret. You learned something, even if you take steps that don't have like a quote unquote positive outcome. Yeah, they're saying if you have this like really deep chronic, like, oh my gosh, my feeling's wrong, I don't trust myself, that's a kind of deeper level thing to work on, that you should work on. And some people have to. There's no shame in that. There's some lesson. There's some uncovering that wants to happen with you having that inner doubt. But attend to that, because of course you can trust yourself. Who else are you going to trust if not yourself? Nobody knows you better than you. Nobody knows your life. Nobody knows inside your head. And nobody is more attuned to the compass that is your soul contracts in your life than you. Of course you can trust yourself, right? Yeah, they're showing me some of you have some like early life traumas to close some loops on and to resolve that are what brought this question of, can I trust myself? And you got to rewrite that story a little bit so that you can make peace and honor what happened without this misunderstanding that happened, that whatever went down for you was because you couldn't trust yourself. Like, that's not actually the answer to what happened, but you got to find that out. You got to rewrite that story. Is there anything else on trusting the yeses before we move on to the boundaried yeses? No, we're going to move on to the boundaries yeses. We're going to keep this kind of quick, moving fast. Boundaried yeses. This is one of my favorite things. The first concept of this was related to managing my energy levels at work, which is one of the recent past episodes. And it was me realizing that I didn't have to give 1,000% of my energy for every single thing. Like, there could be times where I was happy to do it, but I knew inside of myself I was only giving it like 30% of my energy. Or at work, maybe starting to give it only like 60% of my energy. I was still doing a great job. I was still in integrity. I was still absolutely like, meeting the reasonable requirements of my job, but I wasn't dumping all of my energy, right? It was yes with a boundary, because I wanted energy for my life. I wanted it for like my own time, for my health, for the things I had enjoyed, for my relationships. Like, I wanted energy for my friggin' life. And the only way that I could have that was if I rationed my energy, if I managed my own energy, if I put some boundaries around where my energy was going. Right? So that was kind of like my first concept into boundaried yeses. And I think that idea can apply to so many things, right? Like, if somebody asks you to come to an event and you know that you need, or just frankly that you want, a couple hours of alone time on a Sunday before you go into the week, that something about that feels like it's going to be the perfect match for what your body needs. It's the time where you do your laundry and all of these things that have this big ripple effect on your week. If you know that that time is so sacred to you and that you want to spend your energy there, and somebody asks you to come to a thing and technically you want to, but there's a boundary with it, like I'm only coming for 2 hours. First of all, you don't have to over-explain yourself. You say, yeah, I can come for 2 hours. And if they're, oh, I'm so mad. No, well then I can't come. If what you're asking is, can I come for 6 hours? No, I can't do that. That's a no. You're asking, can I just come at all? Yeah, this is how I can come to this event, is for 2 hours. Does that work for you? Oh, it doesn't work for you? Okay, well then I just won't come. Like, you know, and then when you're there, again, if you're in relationships with people who don't respect your boundaries and push you and put you in situations where you have to question if you're respecting your own boundaries, for me, those would be conversations I'd be having with those people, or potentially relationships I would not really be interacting in as much anymore. But let's assume that like once you say no for 2 hours, and then at this 2 hours, they're going to be like, oh no, we're so sad you're going to leave, and be like, I know, I love you guys too, but see you later. I was so happy to be here these 2 hours I was here, you know? A boundaried yes. It's basically that energy of what I just said. I can do it in this way. This is how I can be able to do it for you. That's the energy of a boundaried yes. Right? And the other person that is requesting something, they have every right to say no. Actually, what I need is something different. I need something more. And in that case, it becomes a no. It becomes a sign that what you are moved and even able to offer that situation was not a match, and therefore you shouldn't be the one to give it. And that's great, because then that person is going to go find where they're meant to be. Do you know what I'm saying? This was big for some of my friendships coming out of college, and we were starting to get into our jobs. One of my friends, she's so good about this, and I love her for it. We kind of had some friends, and even maybe in ourselves, like where something would happen, like we'd immediately be texting or calling our other friends, like so upset, and oh my gosh, can you talk about this? Can you come over? There'd be kind of that energy, like in our friend group. And we got to the point where there was no thing about us being available at any time all the time. Like, because that's not a healthy thing in relationships, right? With the exception of maybe your intimate partner, especially if you're parenting kids or being a parent or whatever. But like in friendships, it's not a reasonable thing to expect that people are at your beck and call all the time. No, especially in the middle of a workday, like I'm working, you know? So anyway, not that we would respond right away. Okay. Now we would respond, of course, as soon as we could, especially given the like urgency of the situation. And then she would do this thing where she would say, you know, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, here is when I can call you, or here is when I can come over, you know, instead of even the language being like, oh, I can't come over tonight, or I can't call you right now. It was, here is what I can do. I can call you at 6 o'clock tonight, because she knew it was after she had this activity she committed to and that finished this meeting or whatever. That was going to be when she had time and space to really give her full attentiveness to that friend who was having some issues, right? Or, you know, again, it wasn't focusing on, I can't come tonight or tomorrow or this weekend, I've already have commitments, being like, well, here's when I can. I want to support you, and here's when I'm going to be able to do it, right? And just being transparent with people and letting them either say, yep, that's great, I'm so happy for that level of support you're able to get, and if they need something different, empowering them to go get it, right? Or if they don't want that because they're going to go get something else, they can tell you, actually, I'm going to go ask so-and-so. And you say, okay, great. I love you so much. Keep me posted. You know what I mean? Is there any other kind of boundaried yes that you want to chat with the community about? Yeah, they're showing me that there might be some practice to be had around this idea of what do I want to give, and can I not over-explain that, right? Because sometimes you might be able to go over, let's in this example with the friends, you might technically have the time in your schedule to go over, drop everything, and go over and be with that friend. But what you want to do is, again, maybe do your laundry, or you want to have that quality time with your partner, or you want to do a fun little full moon ceremony that you know is going to address some of these things that are really bubbling up. Like, that's what you really want. When you tune into your body and your energy is clearly showing you it wants to flow there. There's nothing restricting you from giving it, but what you want is actually to do something else. And when you think about when would I want to go over, it's the next day, right? Like, you being able to trust that, again, your yes and your desire is a very sacred guide and messenger from spirit about the divine plan of it all for yourself and for other people is something that some of us might need a little practice on. And again, there's nothing to be guilty about. Again, there still can be ways that you can be attentive to people. You can say, oh my gosh, I'm thinking of you, you know? I'll send you some prayers. Like, maybe it's like we can text about it and I can put down my phone, do my little ritual, and then pick it back up afterwards or something. Like there's, here's how I can still support you, but I can't come over tonight. I can come over tomorrow, like you learning how to trust the nuance of that and not needing to over explain and not needing to feel like crushed with guilt or whatever. Feels like it might be a little bit of a practice for all of us, but that's important too. And it's very reasonable. It's very healthy, right? A lot of us were taught that the only way to love people is to drop everything and be there for them. But that is not healthy love. That's not reasonable love. That's very codependent love. There should be room in any relationship for us to reasonably say, I'm not available for this right now, but here is how and when I can be available to support you. And the relationship should be able to tolerate that because, again, the other person can manage themselves or they have other places they can go to for support. And because they respect and trust you, that when you have like the actual capacity to support them, you will. And if you don't, it's not anything personal against them. Do you know what I'm saying? Like there has to be the ability to tolerate that in any relationship, especially work relationships. It is inappropriate for work to demand all of your energy and for you to be like responding on a drop of a hat. If you are not making 7 figures or very close to it, and you are literally available on the dot, you are putting in way more than you are getting paid for. And it is very inappropriate, grabby work relationship. And you're letting them take more than they should from you. I'm so sorry to say. Right? There should be the ability for there to be boundaried yeses, for there to be nos, and for you to follow your yeses in any circumstance or relationship. Is there anything else you want to share before we finish up, guides? They want me to share about like my experience now. Yeah, I guess I would just say that I've gained proof about how it always works out well when I trust my heart-led desires that serves everybody. Like at first I had some question marks, like, is this really good for everybody? Like, I know it's good for me, but how is it good for them? Like they're going through it. Like I had some of those questions, but I trusted, because I felt the truth of this and I've gained proof. For example, what was the name of that episode? I think it was What You Resist Persist episode. And it was literally a circumstance of life and death, of somebody's life and their health being threatened. And I had a very, very clear feeling about what I needed to do and boundaries that needed to happen. And I share an example with a family member of how me sticking to my guns actually kind of set up a situation to where they experienced healing I wasn't sure was really possible for them because I said no, because I put up boundaries, right? So the proof kind of comes with the pudding. We got to put it into action to let your body learn it's safe and to let your mind start to catalog the proof of, oh wait, here's how it can be true. That when I say yes to something that's a yes, it works out. When I say no to something that's a no for me, it's still for the highest and best good of all of us. Here is how it can work out really well. When I have a boundary around a yes and I stick to that, I respect myself and all of that kind of stuff. So don't be afraid to just try, experiment. Do it in lower stakes places, maybe safer relationships and little smaller settings so that your nervous system can again start to like associate safety and get used to it. But I promise you, you can trust your yeses, you can trust your nos, and you can trust your boundaried yeses. It's one of the ways you can move through your life and your path with the most ease and staying in your authenticity. I hope this episode was helpful. Let me know your guys' thoughts. Do you have more questions about this? I love to chat about them. I love to gab about it. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next time for more breakthroughs. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Breakthroughs with Brie. But before you go, please take a moment to either rate and review the podcast on whatever platform you're listening to it, or share this episode or maybe one of your other favorites with friends or loved ones that you think might enjoy or benefit from this content. Both of those things help more than you know, so that I can keep creating these episodes to help us all have more breakthroughs. Remember, you can connect with me on social media, sign up for my email list, hear what products, services, or events that I'm currently offering, all in the link in the show description or by visiting my website, healingwithbrie.net. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for your support and for the time that you're taking to heal yourself and align more with your beautiful soul, as it helps us all so much more than you realize. I'll see you all next week for more breakthroughs.